So, good evening, everyone. I'm live with the one, the only, Thunderous One. Welcome, Thunders. Thank you for joining me here tonight.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for inviting me on your show again in our now new weekly slot of Sunday 6:30 or 6:15 today, maybe.
I am so sorry. Yeah, I changed the time and I didn't let Thunderous know, so that's why it was my fault again. So I do apologize. And thank you to the audience for being with us tonight. We've of course got Horse, we've got Mike, we have XYZ, we've got GOKM, we've got Neil, Nathaniel from Israel, we've got Genesis, and we've got Corin. Welcome, Corin, and Peter Foley. So tonight's topic is going to be Soviet Fakestinia or Soviet Palestine. We're going to look at the true history of a fake country. Your thoughts before I continue, Thunderous?
This is going to be totally new to me, so I'm looking at this with fresh eyes, just like much of the audience. I'm going to comment as much as I can, but I'm going to be learning as we go through this as well, because, like I say, this is very new to me too.
All right. I did give Thunderous the slides, right? So, but that's, but that's it. I mean, you are the Vox Populi, Everyone says we're a great team, except for me. So I think everyone prefers Thunderous.
That's not true. I think it's just a team effort, as we were saying earlier, just a team effort. And I did look through the sides, but I think it's one of those where slight explanations will need to be made in context with some of the comments that were made.
All right. Yeah, so I'm putting on the headphones just in case, because I was hearing some feedback. All right, guys. So thank you very much for being here. So let's switch over and let's begin. So we'll dive into this one. So welcome, Quinn Blessed, Sandro. Yo, welcome. Good to see you. Anthony Maguire, Enki, John Cody, Charon. Okay, just out of interest, Thunderous, you see this on your screen because I'm sharing with you directly. Do you see any similarities with the Soviet symbol, the communist symbol, the Muslim symbol, and the Sufi symbol?
I can see two similarities. Obviously, the first one would be the star, the five-pointed star, I might add. And though the Sufi and the crescent upside down are similar, you could argue for the sickle being some kind of twist or play on the crescent shape.
Yeah, so I got this from an audience member. So thank you very much for those who post me these things, who post me links, books, documents. I learn a lot from you guys as well. So yeah, there's something a little similar about these. I'm not going to read anything into it. I'll just leave it out there. But maybe worth digging into this. Do you think this is worth looking up and seeing if there's anything to be found, Thunderous?
I think so, because see, when you look through history, things are grafted on from one period of history to another. I was just looking at the crescent-shaped moon and the Sufi symbol to the side, and if you look at the red sickle, the yellow sickle in the red flag image, you see the wheat. I think is a representation of wheat going around. And if you look at the crescent-shaped moon, the green moon, that's going round, and then you've got the wings going round. I don't know if that symbology and pattern is deliberately there as well as some kind of representation, but just I think symbols are important. When you look at the Nazi swastika, that actually comes from Hinduism. Ganesh has it on his paw. Yeah. So there has to be a reason why they grafted on through history.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Francis. That was so kind of you for the donation. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, so let's have a look at this then. By the way, something I've noticed constantly throughout this whole recent, on X, on Twitter, is Jesus was a Palestinian. That's something we have to address because Jesus was a Muslim because of prostration. Prostration means to lie flat on the ground, but notice Buddhists are also Muslims. Can you see that? Buddhists, do you agree with me that Buddhists are also Muslims, Thunderous?
No, this is. I did a talk on this. I don't know if it was on your channel or
we did one on this.
Yeah, about prayer, and all that is when you pray in that particular posture, it's the lowest way of form that a human can be when they're at their most vulnerable, if you like, or sincere in their prayer towards God. It comes from proskynesis, which is proskynesis, proskynesis. So if you look that up and then go to Google Images, you'll see this similarity of various postures used in prayer. But you'll notice that all of the postures are used by the religion of Islam.
Yeah, and also Jesus prayed seated, Jesus prayed standing, Jesus prayed kneeling, and Muslims seem to somehow forget that. But for the audience, you need to note that Buddha was 500 BC, and also Muslims, I've got videos on my channel and I've discussed this, Muslims claim that Zoroaster, the pagan god of the Persians, was a Muslim, and Hermes Trismegistus, who is the god who underpins a lot of the occultic movements, is supposed to be also an ancestor of Muslims and a forerunner of Muhammad. He brought the hikmah, the wisdom, into Islam. Yes, Thunderous?
Yeah, I was just going to say they're not praying to Mecca because Abraham and Moses would not pray to Mecca, or even Jesus, because Mecca didn't exist at that period of time. They weren't facing Mecca. What words were they using? Because Abraham, Moses, and Jesus would have all been using different words, not the parrot fashion, repeat it 5 times a day, 35 times a week, namaz, as Muslims do.
Yeah. Okay, so enough of that. So let's talk about Soviet Palestine. This is the Fatah flag. Notice it's a religion of peace. How do we know it's a religion of peace? Well, the 2 AK-47s and the hand grenade above Israel, right? Right, Thunderous? Doesn't that just scream peace?
It is the religion of peace, and that flag is very symbolic of peace because...
Because? Sorry, say that again?
I said that is a flag of which is a symbol of peace. The AK-47s are a symbol of peace, and Islam will achieve peace when they wipe out all their enemies, in particular Jews.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about that. So first a word from Muhammad. Muhammad said, "You, the Jews, should know that the earth belongs to Allah and his apostle, and I wish to expel you from this land, Arabia." Now, this is in Da'if Bukhari, and also, by the way, Muslims, please understand, I'm making a joke when I say Da'if Bukhari. It is Sahih Bukhari, because too many Muslims go, why are you quoting a Da'if hadith? Because you guys don't know Islam at all, do you? So it is Da'if Bukhari, and also in Da'if Muslim, right? Doesn't this imply that the Jews were in the land before Muhammad got there?
Well, it's that's an obvious thing to say that... yes, is the case, because when you look through the Quran and Hadith, most of the contention for Muhammad was with Jews. So correct. The Jews, by implication, were needed to be in the area. And
he goes to Medina, and that's a Jewish city. So, yeah, odd. But Umar heard the messenger of Allah say, I will expel the Jews and the Christians. Hold on, now it gets a little worse. I will expel the Jews and the Christians, and I will leave not any but Muslims. What does that imply? That they kicked out the Jews and Christians? They ethnically cleansed the land? Does that tell us that Muhammad was endorsing ethnic cleansing?
Oh, absolutely. And it's a form of ethnic cleansing that still exists to this day as well.
So this is religious ethnic cleansing. That's fascinating, isn't that? It's Sahih Muslim. I mean, let me actually click on this one. Let's actually go there. Yeah,
I was going to say, which is interesting, where Allah says there's no compulsion in religion in Islam, eh?
Yeah. So this is in Quranics.com, which claims to be the most complete and accurate collection of Islamic source texts, not just hadiths. So you can see here, and I will expel the Jews and Christians, and I will leave not any but Muslims. So yeah, that's authentic. Yeah.
You'll notice it says that in the ayah that you've quoted above, it says that the earth belongs to Allah, but he said, I will expel the Jews. So you really have to argue, does he really believe that Arabia belongs to Allah, or is he claiming it for himself? But he can't claim it for himself, so he has to get Allah into the equation. Then he says, I will expel the Jews. Not Allah will expel the Jews, because if it's Allah's land, then Allah should be...
Yeah, because the voice is in his head. Allah has that voice in his head that told him that, right? Okay, yes. So... thank you very much for the Super Chat, Crusader General. Thank you. I'm very grateful. Much appreciated. So the apostle said, kill any Jew that falls into your power. Thereupon Muhayyisa bin Masud leapt upon Ibn Sunayna, a Jewish merchant with whom they had social and business relations, and killed him. That's in Sirat Rasulallah, page 369, section 554. Now this section continues. It goes, this guy's brother goes to him and says, are you crazy? You have fat on your belly because this man has made you who you are today, has helped you get where you are. He has assisted you in business. He's helped to prosper your business. And he says, why would you do that? And then this guy says, because Muhammad inspired me. Muhammad inspired me to kill him. And if Muhammad had told me to kill you, my brother, I would have murdered you the same way. And his brother apparently says, oh man, that is a powerful religion. That is so inspirational. And then he converts to Islam immediately. Your thoughts on this, Thunderous?
I've heard that story many times. I just don't make sense how killing or the spilling of blood with intimate family can draw you to a religion as though it's to suggest its truth. Personally, I'm of the opinion the brother bottled it and joined it because he had no opportunity but to join. Otherwise, his own blood would have been spilt.
Yeah, his brother would have killed him. So understand. So does this lead us to start to feel that this is genuinely a religion of peace that just loves Jews and other people?
With entry-level intelligence, you can discern this is a religion of war.
Abu Huraira reported Allah's messenger, police be upon him, or piss be upon him, I'm not sure how you say that word, as saying, the last hour would not come unless the Muslims fight against the Jews and the Muslims would kill the Jews, until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, Muslim, or the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. But the tree Garkad would not say, for it is the tree of the Jews. That's in Sahih Muslim, book 41, hadith 6985. Does that sort of tell us that this is just a religion of love, of brotherly love? Or does it say that the end times, Muhammad would not return until the Muslims have murdered all the Jews? Am I reading this right?
No, you're reading it right. The thing is, see, this is why there can't be any peace. And what people don't seem to understand is that there can never be peace between Jews and Muslims. Otherwise, this prophecy will not be. This is eschatology for Islam. This has to happen. This can only happen if there's a contention between the Jews and the Muslims. Otherwise, it won't happen in their perspective. So maintaining the hostility and hatred is in effect prolonging or the inevitable, in their mind, what's inevitably going to happen, which is this moment in history where inanimate objects like stones and organic objects like trees will have the ability to speak, voice opinion, voice concern, and out of their own free will, speak to Muslims in the language they can understand and say, there's a human being behind me, kill him. Apart from this one particular Gurkha tree, no explanations being.
The box thorn, apparently it's called. Yeah, the box thorn.
Sorry?
Apparently it's the box thorn tree.
Well, I mean, this is why you'll never get peace. This is, and I noticed with Mohammed Hijab, he was on the show with Pierce Brosnan and the Rabbi Shmuley in their
Piers Morgan.
Yeah, that's the one where Rabbi Shmuley mentioned this particular prophecy that this will happen. The interesting thing was that Mohammed Hijab played it off as that's eschatology, trying to imply that the language of eschatology is something that can be interpreted. Well, the reality is that the Quran makes it clear in so many times that this is a book made clear. This is a book easy to understand. Now, if God can communicate to human beings in a manner, in Islamic parlance, in a manner that can be understood in a clear manner way, then you can bet your last dollar that Muhammad can speak in a much more clear way, because his language will not be as sophisticated as Allah's. So there will be no need for interpretation or reinterpretation in this ayah. It is black and white. It means what it says. Muslims are to kill Jews.
Yeah, I just want to keep the content concise because we won't finish this in one episode, Thunderous. And thank you again, Francis. Much appreciated. And then also the Soviet section will probably come in part 2. I don't know if I'll get through everything. I'm going to try to do 20 slides today. Killing Jews, Muhammad's example. This is the life of Muhammad, the Sirat Rasulullah. And I'll continue with what I showed you before. Had the one who ordered me to kill him ordered me to kill you, I would have cut your head off. He said that this was the beginning of Huwaisa's acceptance of Islam. The other replied, by God, if Muhammad had ordered you to kill me, would you have killed me? He said, yes, by God. Had he ordered me to cut off your head, I would have done so. And he says, by God, a religion which can bring you to this is marvelous. And he became a Muslim. The religion of ethnic cleansing. Welcome to Islam. This is supposed to be authentic Islam. Right, so Palestine existed. Some basic questions. So, if Palestine was a real place and not a fairy tale unicornia somewhere, we must be able to answer some basic historical questions. When was it founded and by whom? Mickey Mouse or someone else? What were its borders? What was its capital? Welcome Century Since. Welcome Noah Act. Ernesto. What were its major cities? What was its underlying economy made of? Do you think there are any answers to this so far, Thunderous? Because no one has ever answered me. I have asked this many times. I am waiting for answers. Never found them. So, what form did its government have? Can you name at least one Palestinian leader before Yasser Arafat? Was Palestine ever recognized by a country whose existence at one time or another was a definite real country? Right? Like maybe did, I don't know, Unicorniastan recognize Palestine as a real country? Any thoughts, Thunderous?
No. It's yeah.
What was the language of the state of Palestine? So, sorry, hold on. I've got some typos. Hang on. I got some typos because, as you know, it's correctly pronounced Palestine because they don't have the P in their language. But okay, Palestine. Did I consult a scholar? Yeah. So I keep asking Muslims that. Did you consult a scholar? What was the language of the state of Palestine? What was the most common religion in the state of Palestine? Bepsi. That's why we all drink Bepsi. What was the name of its currency? Pick a date. Any date. Surprise me. What was the exchange rate of the Palestinian currency against the USD, the Deutschmark, the Euro, the Pound, the Yen, or the Won? Any ideas? Is this ringing any bells so far? Thunderous?
These are all implication questions, absolutely. And each one of them is a well thought out question in itself.
Actually, someone just gave us the correct name. Palestine.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, Palestine. Okay, let's continue. Let's make sure we get through the questions. Ask people this, all right? It's in the description. You can copy and paste it. Since there is no country called Palestine today, what caused its destruction and when did this destruction happen? I mean, did dinosaurs eat everybody? Was it a chicken pox outbreak? In other words, mad chickens went around pecking everyone to death? Okay, so you mourn the slow decline of the formerly proud country of Palestine. When exactly was the state proud and what was it proud of? Okay. Are the people you mistakenly call Palestinians something other than generic Arabs gathered from everywhere or thrown out of the Arab world? You know, like the people you don't want. It's like you come from a good home and that home doesn't want you back. Do they really have a genuine ethnic identity that gives them right for self-determination? The answer to that is no, by the way. Why hadn't they ever tried to gain independence until the Arabs suffered a crushing defeat in the Six-Day War? And how else can you explain the refusal by Jordan and Egypt to take back the West Bank and Gaza in a dignified manner and unconditionally? And we will have to discuss this as we go. Any final thoughts in this, Thunderous, before I move on?
No thoughts.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm still waiting for Muslims to answer me. All of these pro blah, blah, blah. Pick a date. Pick a date, any date. Explain to me. So let's have a quick look at the Israel timeline. Okay, so let me click on the image, bring this up. Let's do this. This is a brief timeline of the land of Israel. You had ancient Israel, and it's called Israel in the Bible. It's called Israel in the Quran. Fancy that. Then you had the Babylonians destroy the temple. This is BC 586. Then the Persians come along. Then you have the Hellenistic era with Alexander the Great. You have the Hasmonean dynasty. Then you have the Roman era. Right? You have Jesus in this period. The Romans destroy the Second Temple after the Great Revolt. Then you have Constantine converts to Christianity, and Constantine writes the Bible, as everybody knows. That's not true. Then you have the Arab Caliphate, because these Arabs, invade the land. Right? Then you have the Crusader era. Then you have the Mamelukes. Then the Ottomans. Then the British Mandate. Then once again the State of Israel. Okay? Founded after the Six-Day War, so I'll close that. So in 1900 BC, Abraham is chosen by God as the father of the Jewish nation. Right? Unless we can prove somehow he was a Muslim. In Islam does claim that Abraham was a Muslim. They make that claim explicitly. I've spoken about that in other shows. Isaac, Abraham's son, rules over Israel. Then Jacob, son of Isaac, rules over Israel. Moses leads the people out of Egypt and back to Israel. Does anyone question that Moses was an Israeli, or at least Jewish? Thunderous, your thoughts so far?
Nobody questions it apart from Muslims. But then that's a question in itself, because I thought Muhammad was the first Muslim. So how can Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Moses be Muslims if Muhammad was a Muslim?
Yeah. Someone mentions Palestinians have been around since the time immemorial. It started with the Palestinosaurus, who later evolved into Homo Palestinians. Yeah. Yeah. Then King David unites the 12 tribes. Was he a Muslim, Thunderous? This King David guy?
I think King David would have used the sword on the Muslims rather than be a Muslim.
Then King Solomon builds the first temple structure. Is that a Muslim temple that he built, by the way?
Not in the slightest. And why would they? The thing is to see, why would they need to build a temple if Mecca had already been existing? Because Mecca was the first building on earth and the center of worship. So what would be the point of the temple being built by Solomon?
Yeah, if Mecca's the oldest, if Mecca was the oldest temple built by Abraham, when was Abraham in Saudi Arabia? Oh man, it just doesn't make sense. And of course, hold on, actually no, Abraham. Okay, so the story is in Islam. Abraham built the Kaaba, except that Abraham repaired the Kaaba, and of course Hagar took Isaac with her to Mecca, right? They settled in Mecca where there was nothing, and they were going to die because there was no water, there was no food, there was nothing. It was empty desert. They were sitting in the middle of the oldest city on earth, next to the oldest temple on earth, which was just desert. There was no one there. There was nothing there, no buildings. This is the official Muslim story. And of course, an angel or a bird or someone's heel or something, somehow, something created a spring of water, and then Abraham came, and Abraham decided to repair the Kaaba, which was there, but it wasn't there when Hagar was there. But when he got there with Hagar, and Hagar got there alone, but she got there alone with just the boy without Abraham, but Abraham was there with her, and then they built the Kaaba, except they rebuilt the Kaaba because the Kaaba was damaged, except it wasn't there when Hagar was there, and then Adam actually built the Kaaba long before Abraham, so Abraham repaired it, because it was in disrepair, but it's in the oldest city in the world. Does this make any sense, Thunderous? Because that is the official Muslim narrative on this.
If that Kaaba has any more builders, it'd be the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, and then Adam was, of course, people don't realize, Adam was 30 meters tall. Adam was like 96 feet tall, according to Muslims. He was 96 feet tall, and he built a school for ants, which he couldn't fit into. So I don't know why he didn't build a building tall enough for him. So yeah, that's the Thunderous.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that's one of the things when I discussed about 94 Adam several years ago on Thaddeus' show about the logistics of a man building an object that he would have to bow down to, which was only sort of 15 feet high in comparison to his 90 feet high, and the logistics and the damage it would have done to his back. But that's a separate subject, but you're raising good points there that the consistency of the narrative doesn't stand up to scrutiny, even entry-level intelligence scrutiny. Yeah,
it's complete nonsense. So Israel is split into two kingdoms. The kingdom of Israel, oddly enough, weird name that, and then the kingdom of Judah. It didn't get split into Palestine. That's weird. Then in the 800s, you have the rise of the prophets. You have the kingdom of Israel conquered by the Assyrians, and then the kingdom of Judah by the Babylonians. Solomon's temple destroyed by the Babylonians, and the Persians conquer the Babylonians and take control of Israel. Then in 520 BC, the temple is rebuilt. In 450 BC, reforms are made. The Jews return to Israel from exile in 538 BC. Then you have Malachi. Then blah, blah, it goes on. The Greeks conquer the Persian Empire, 333 BC. The Egyptians and Syrian Empire take over Israel. Then the Hasmoneans recapture Israel and the Jews are ruled. Then in 70 BC, the Romans conquer Israel. Then King Herod builds the second temple, and then Jesus is born in Bethlehem. And then the Romans destroy the temple. After that, the people were captives to the Romans. Notice that few people realize, but the whole idea of Syria Palestina, and it was called Syria Palestina, I'll cover later, comes only in the 2nd century. The idea of Syria Palestina is a 2nd century invention, right? So the Romans destroy the temple, and then the people were captives to the Romans, the Byzantines, the Arabs, and the Crusaders, and then the Jewish people returned to Israel, eventually to their old homeland, right? Any thoughts before I go on, Thunderous?
Yeah, I did think it was interesting. I'm kind of, and I don't say this in a condescending way, where you brought up about 520 and the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem, because that's actually in the book of Nehemiah. He silently. The interesting thing is, if you read the account, he silently prays in his head. So there was no posture, no formulaic words to be used. He's having a personal relationship with his God. His God answers the prayer. But when he goes to rebuild the walls and the temple in Jerusalem, there are many people that are trying to stumble or object or showing hatred against the wall being built. And amongst the many nations that are represented there, which one nation is particularly mentioned as hating the fact that the wall and the temple is being rebuilt? Who do you think that is?
Say that again. So just repeat the question. Sorry.
If you read the book of Nehemiah, and Nehemiah goes back to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, but there is one bunch of people who are in particular contempt towards Nehemiah because they don't want the temple and the walls being rebuilt. Of all the nations, okay, which ones are the ones that did not want the wall and the temple to be rebuilt? And people could find this out for themselves by reading the book of Numbers. Can I just read one scripture from there?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, let me just get it first. This is what happens when you're not fully prepared.
I can bring it up if you want. So,
actually, I think I've got it here. Yeah, I've got it here. The book of Numbers, chapter 2, verse 19. And I'm going to read it from the Byington translation. And it says here, and Sanballat the Horonite, and Tobijah the Ammonite slave, and Geshem the Arab heard of it and made fun of us and treated us contemptuously and said, what's this that you are doing, rebelling against the king? So they were trying to stir up like a political intrigue that would get
Numbers 2:19.
Where was I? Bear with me one moment. Nehemiah 2:19, then Nehemiah 4:7.
Oh, sorry, Nehemiah 4:7.
Yeah, I'm reading 4:7 and 8 now. So this will be where it says, and when Sanballat and Tobijah and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem were mending because of the breaches had begun to be stopped, they were very angry and all plotted together to come and make an armed attack on Jerusalem to throw it off its course. Now, does that sound like friendly people to you, these Arabs, or does it sound like that? Does it sound like that the Arabs had already had in their culture a particular animosity towards Jews that Muhammad perhaps has started to play upon when he came on the scene?
Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
Also,
thanks, Ruth.
There's another scripture. I don't know where it is. I'll maybe if somebody wants to know it, I'll bring it out later on. But they came with camels, and on the camels' necks were ornaments in the shape of crescents.
I've read those in Monotheism and other series. I've spoken about that. Yeah, but Gideon. Yeah. All right. So this is Jerusalem. Okay. This now all of you might know about or not know about the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. Okay, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who eventually joined the German army, and he actually ran an SS division. He raised something like 600,000 troops for the Germans that fought against the Allies. So few realize that the Palestinians also were very much Nazis, right? And so the Muslims also fought on behalf of the Nazis. In fact, the largest Nazi SS division was the Hanshar. They were Muslims. So the largest Nazi SS division was the Muslim division. This is a book called A Brief Guide to the Al-Haram al-Sharif, Jerusalem, published by the Supreme Muslim Council in 1925. So this is the Jerusalem Supreme Muslim Council, 1925. And here they say in this book, this site is one of the oldest in the world. Its sanctity dates from the earliest, perhaps from prehistoric times. Its identity with the site of Solomon's temple is beyond dispute. This too is the spot, according to the universal belief, on which David built there an altar unto the Lord, and he offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. But for the purposes of this guide, which confines itself to the Muslim period, the starting point is the year 637 AD. So now you've got this Nazi Mufti who is advising people, who is the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who writes a guidebook stating that the Muslim period starts with the invasion in 637 AD. In that year, the Caliph Omar occupied Jerusalem. So here you've got the Muslims invading, and they admit that prior to the Muslims, this was Jewish holy ground. Doesn't that contradict the standard Islamic narrative that Palestine goes back into the prehistoric era?
Of course it does. But everybody with any, even, I keep repeating the term, entry-level intelligence, even into history, would know that that's true as well.
Yep. So, yeah. So this is a chronology of the kingdoms again. Okay, so you have the land of the Hebrews. Then Abraham starts to worship Yahweh. He stops worshipping the moon god, Shin, and then he worships Yahweh. And so he becomes the first Jew. Okay, then you've got all of these changes, right? So you've got Canaan. This goes back 1812 years, right? And eventually you have Israel. So this is after something like 5,727 years, apparently, of Israeli culture or Israeli history that they trace back to. All right, so now let's have a look at Egypt versus Jordan. Let's go to the 1960s. In the 1960s, the 1967 borders, right, became a topic of major conversation. Now, these borders referred to the territorial divisions between Egypt and Jordan. Egypt controlled Gaza in the 1960s. Jordan annexed the West Bank before 1967. So now this concept of a Palestinian state only began to develop in the 1960s. There was no discussion of Palestine, at least in the modern era, prior to that. Egypt wanted to establish a unified Arab state called the United Arab Republic, not Palestine. They wanted to actually create a United Arab Republic to unite Arab populations. And of course, tensions arose between Egypt and Jordan. Now, if Israel had ceased to exist in the 60s, this would not have guaranteed any peace whatsoever. You would have had a conflict between Egypt and Jordan because they were fighting over the management of the land where an Arab state named Palestine had never existed. They never discussed Palestine. They were discussing Transjordan, the Jordanian, the Hashemite kingdom, and of course this United Arab Republic. So creating a Palestinian state based on the 1967 borders is not a restoration of any previous circumstance. It is just the establishment of a completely new state. And when they lost badly in the war, that's when they had to decide, hold on, let's invent a new story. And eventually we'll see how the Russians come into this, the KGB. Right, so the Philistines, okay? Are these people Philistines or are they Arabs, abandoned by Arabs? So to be a nation, you have to meet certain criteria. You must have a functioning government. You must have a ruler, an emperor or a king. You must have national borders. You must have a currency and you must have a flag. Now, we've already discovered we have none of these things for Palestine, at least not the Arab Muslim Palestine that they claim today. Those questions cannot be answered because it never existed. None of these are correlated to a nation called Palestine pre-1948. All of the history of that place is entirely Jewish. Is there any archaeological evidence for this that supports the Palestinian cause? No. Your thoughts, Thunderous, so far?
No, so far so good. Yeah, in total agreement.
Now, they claim they are not Arabs. So they claim that they are Philistines, the enemies of Israel. So the Philistines are the enemies of Israel. So that leads us to the story of Goliath. Now, the giant Goliath issued a challenge to the Israelites in 1 Samuel 17 verse 9. He proposed that if any one man from Israel could defeat him in combat, the Philistines would become slaves to Israel forever. But if Israel lost, they would become slaves to the Philistines. Who won that fight? I'm battling here. I'm trying to remember, but who won that fight, Thunderous?
Well, wasn't there some young shepherd kid that went out and he had a sling? And,
Fernando. I remember a song by ABBA about Fernando, the shepherd boy. Isn't that right?
No,
did Fernando win the fight, or was it
is
a different one, a different shepherd boy? Help me out.
A different shepherd boy. Absolutely. And I think he also used the sword of that Goliath Philistine and chopped off the Philistine's head. Yeah.
So David, who became King David, beats him. So now what you've got is you've got the situation where the Philistines had said, if we win this battle, if we defeat Goliath, you become our slaves. So I kindly request the Palestinians to please just do as they're promised to do. That would be so nice, so nice. Now, these people are the abandoned peoples of 6 nations, okay? Amongst them, Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. Now, they all told these people to stay put during the war. And then they would kill all the Jews, just as Muhammad had instructed them to do. And those people could take all the Jewish property and all the land, and they would live there. Now, the Jews, of course, beat all 6 nations in the Six-Day War, after which those nations told those people that they could not return to the lands of their birth. They were no longer citizens of those nations, and they had to stay put to be used as political pawns. Now, this nation called Palestine, the current myth, is a Muslim propaganda lie. It is foisted on the world, and it is used in the political arena to demonize Israel. Yeah, the rocks and the trees didn't keep their part of the deal. Yeah, that's crazy stuff, right? The rocks and the trees didn't keep their part of the deal. Bad rocks, bad trees. Right. So, but since a Palestinian state does need a flag, let's have a look at their flags. This is the Fatah flag. You've got AK-47s, right? And everyone knows how friendly those are. And this is on top of the land of Israel. And of course, the Palestinian Authority's Fatah party says incitement in Israeli schools poses a threat to Palestinians. We all know what they teach these little 3-year-olds. They teach them how to behead Jewish children. We know that. And let's have a look at the flag of the Hitler Youth section of Palestine that was seized at the German consulate during World War II. As you can see here, the mention of Palestina is very, very visible on both. So this is the Palestinian Hitler Youth. The Palestinians embraced Hitler. They loved Hitler. They loved them some Nazis. Your thoughts on that, Thunderous?
Was that like a bargaining trade-off with the Muslims, as it were, at the time with Hitler, that if the Muslims assisted Hitler in his war machine, he would grant them Palestine as a trade-off?
Okay, that's fair enough. So actually, hold on. Maybe I should jump ahead here to something. Let me jump to slide number... Let me actually do this. So I'm going to jump to slide number 19 just to clarify some of this. Okay, this is the letter here from the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, the Hajj Amin al-Husseini. And this is not so easy to read, but anschließend des Tages des Balfour. Okay, so let me see what he says here. Den festen Entschluss der Araber und der Muslime, dein Kampf. Okay, so this is our commitment, this is our decision of the Arabs and the Muslims, that we will join the war, we will join your fight against the Jews, and we will be your helpers. Okay? We are going to join ourselves, commit ourselves to Germany to kill the Jews. Right? This is from Hajj Amin al-Husseini in the German here. Right? And so he makes a commitment that the Arabs and the Muslims are going to join Hitler to murder the Jews. So that's what happened. That's what we've got going on here. So that's a commitment from this guy. Your thoughts on this, Thunderous?
Yeah, I see what it's saying there. Absolutely. Pretty much what I was saying.
Yeah. So there you go. So these guys, so these little, as you can see, here's the guy here. That's him having little tea and crumpets with Hitler. So let's continue. So anyway,
can I just address the question? Can I just address the question that's brought up in the chat by Peter Foley? It reads, I was under the impression that from God's perspective, the ethnic nation of Israel lost their right to the land when elected Christ, not trying to be provocative, and you're not being provocative. In fact, Peter, I share the same view as you, that they did lose their right. So thank you for the question. Perhaps a discussion for another time, but I'm in agreement with you.
Yeah, so what we should do is, the simple solution is that the Jews should have nowhere to go. They should be a dispossessed people living in Boston, maybe. What do you think? Which they should have no land, no rights to any land. And that would make perfect sense, unless maybe they're entitled to actually have a country of their own. That said, that is not that's not a position I agree with. That is actually saying, well, yeah, they deserve to have no land. That would be a typical Protestant position, that a la the other Nazi, what was his name? Martin Luther, right? Uber Nazi, Martin Luther. There's a reason why the Nazis loved Martin Luther. So, yeah, moving on. So, Robert Kennedy visits Palestine. Israel declared its independence May 14, 1948. So, Kennedy writes dispatches about Palestine, published in the Boston Post, between June 3rd and 6th, 1948. The first one is titled, British Hated by Both Sides. And this attracts lots of attention. He writes, the Arabs are most concerned about the great increase in the Jews in Palestine, 80,000 in 1948. The Arabs have always feared this encroachment and maintain that the Jews will never be satisfied with just their section of Palestine, but will gradually move to overpower the rest of the country and will eventually move on to the enormously wealthy oil lands. They are determined that the Jews will never get the toehold that would be necessary for fulfillment of that policy. Now, I'm pretty sure the Jews have not invaded Saudi Arabia to steal their oil. I'm fairly sure they've managed to build a very successful financial nation without oil revenues. The Jews point with pride to the fact that over 500,000 Arabs in the 12 years between 1932 and 1944 came into Palestine to take advantage of living conditions existing in no other Arab state. If a Jewish state is formed, it will be the only remaining stabilizing factor in the Near and Far East. So hold on. The Arabs are concerned about 80,000 Jews, but the Jews are okay with 500,000 Arabs. That is called hypocrisy. Well, what do you think?
And also, I'm just thinking, why would 500,000 Arabs need to move from one country to another to take advantage of living conditions that were better? If the Muslim Ummah is supposed to be the last message from the last peoples of Allah, and the Quran and the Sharia, the best code of conduct, and Muhammad's example, the best method of conduct for all mankind, why do Muslims feel the need to keep moving away from countries that use those very books and laws to establish a state?
Right. So Kennedy dismissed Western fears that Israel might turn communist as fanatically absurd. Well, we will be showing that the Muslims not only turned Nazi, but also turned commie. And they argued that the United States and Britain might soon be looking to a Jewish state to preserve a toehold in that part of the world. Actually, hold on. So let's have a look at something. Let me bring up Muslim countries versus Israel map. Let's actually bring this up and see if we can find something. So, okay, for not sure why that didn't come up. Okay, so yeah, let's have a look at this. Okay, everything you see here, these are Muslim countries. All these dark images, these are Muslim countries. Israel barely shows up. Israel is basically invisible on this section. Now, I'd say there's a little bit of land left over for the Palestinians to go to, but that could just be me. So, yeah, I'd say there's a little bit of hypocrisy going on because you cannot even see Israel on this map. There is plenty of free space left over. Now, was Jesus of Galilee, Jesus the Nazarene, was he a Palestinian? Now, I'm going to excuse my French here, but that story that Jesus was a Palestinian, there's a scientific term for that. It's called bullshit. Jesus was a Jew in a conquered Jewish kingdom, which the Romans called Syria Palestina in 135 AD. So this concept of Syria Palestina was done by the Romans in 135 AD. Jesus also, as we know, was not a jihadi. He didn't give the sermon of the suicide bomber. Nor did he say, blessed are the rapists and the child molesters. He also didn't marry a 6-year-old and diddle one. Now, Allah, as we discover, disagrees with Muslims. Allah calls the Jews the chosen people, the children of a place called Israel, oddly enough. And the term Bani Israel is mentioned in the Quran. In fact, before the Hadith, the Muslims were using what they called the Israeliyat. They were actually using Jewish scriptures before that. And then eventually they kicked them out of the Quran and kicked them out of the Islamic corpus. So the Bani Israel refer to the children of Israel. Surah Al-Isra is also known as the Surah Bani Israel, which means the children of Israel. And it's the 17th chapter of the Quran. Your thoughts, Thunderous, before I go on.
For people that are so hatred, it's interesting that they have a chapter named after them.
Yeah. Now, the children of Israel are mentioned frequently in the Quran, and a significant portion of the Quran is dedicated to their story, including their history, trials, and tribulations. The Quran refers to the Holy Land, Al-Ard al-Muqaddasa, and the land of Israel in various verses. It acknowledges and affirms the divine promise of the land to the children of Israel. It mentions several prophets among the children of Israel, including Moses, Aaron, David, Solomon, and others. All of these considered messengers sent by Allah to guide and lead the children of Israel. It lists 20 names of prophets, 13 of them being sent to Israel. And the Quranic verses and sources confirm the mention of the children of Israel and their prophets in the Quran. So if the Jews did not exist, Where are the Palestinian prophets? Did I mention any Palestinian? Have you seen Palestinian prophets in the sent to the Palestinians in the Quran, Thunderous?
No, the interesting is that when I did that discussion about Islam and 124,000 prophets, the only prophets that I mentioned in the Quran are the very ones that I found in the Bible. Out of 124,000 prophets, you can only name 20 odd, and all of them are in the Bible. That seems a bit suspicious to me as well.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. It's like they were copying something from somewhere and corrupting it. That is so weird. So where's the Palestinian prophets? I'll be happy. Someone can just let me know the Palestinian prophets. Love to know about it. Now the Romans and Syria Palestina. The Romans renamed the region of Judea as Syria Palestina in the year 135 AD. Do you think that comes before or after the Jewish era, Thunderous?
That would be, in my estimation, I mean, I could be wrong here. Is it after?
I think so. Look, I have African education, as you know, and I struggle with numbers. If I want to count to 11, I've got to take off my socks. But yeah.
It says AD, and I'm sure that's Latin, it's an abbreviation of the Latin Anno Domini, and Anno Domini means in the year of the Lord, so that would be post-Jesus. I'm just taking a guess there.
Dude, you know, between you and me, I think we sort of qualify for a full brain, right? That's why everyone says we're a great team except for me, because they like how you think. Right. Now, so this renaming was part of the Roman Empire's efforts to suppress Jewish identity after the failed Bar Kokhba revolt. Now, the term Syria, hold on, now, tell me, why are we forgetting that the term is Syria Palestina, not just Palestine? It's actually Syria Palestina. So do you think the Palestinians also have to take over Syria now? Do you think they need to go and have an intifada against the Syrians for stealing their land?
Logic dictates not just there, but if once you've taken one revolt, because I'm just thinking of the Quranic surah that predicates all this, and that would be drive them out from where they've driven you out. So in effect, then, when you consider how Islam spread and was then curbed back, they would have to go to Spain and places in Europe as well, surely.
Yeah, but it's called Syria Palestina, so they actually had Syria too. Isn't that odd? So this was derived from the combination of Syria, the larger neighboring province, and Palestine, a name associated with the ancient Philistines. We will talk more about the Philistines. So it's odd.
Can I just ask something?
Yeah.
It's just coming to my mind, and I want to ask the question: what version of the 77 Islamic versions are we talking about here that should be going into this land? Shia, Sunni, Wahhabi, Sufi, Ahmadiyya? What version of Islam is supposed to take this land anyway? That
is right, because of the 76 tribes or something, only one is going to go. Of the 76 sects, whatever. Yeah, who knows? Allah knows best. That's all we can say. Allah works in mysterious ways. So this was a deliberate attempt by the Romans to erase Jewish historical connection to the land. This was punishment for defying the Roman Empire. So, are they Greek? Okay, what do you need to know about Crete? Let's do a little quick tour of Crete. Crete's a wonderful little island. It's the largest of the Greek islands. You have the Palace of Knossos in Heraklion. Everyone knows he was a Muslim, right? It's the first European palace, so everyone knows the Muslims built that. Beautiful hiking trails, quaint villages, Muslim villages, and has some amazing Muslim archaeological sites. We all know this. So the Philistinians claim that the ancient Philistines are their ancestors. They take their name from the tribe of Goliath. But now we have to ask, do they share DNA? Sorry, but the virgins can either be men, women, or sheep. Oh boy, that's really bad. Yeah, since we're talking about this, hold on. Actually, let's actually go through this. Now, I've just posted one on my... oh, darn it. Come on, I need to open this file. Oh, here we go. By the way, so since someone mentioned, this is Stephen Murray and Will Roscoe, a book called Islamic Homosexualities. Okay, this is fascinating. This is one of many that I've posted. Well, I'll show you one picture. If you have kids in the room, close their eyes right now. Right, this is one of many pictures that I have posted. So let's have a look at this. Okay, Thunderous, do you see what I see here?
I think they're being a bit generous with their over ample proportions there, but that's just obscene. The irony is this, that I have come across Islamic literature where it turns around where they've had printed pamphlets about pornography in the Bible. You know, and then they have literature like this in their own Islamic libraries. It's absolutely obscene.
I've posted previously. Let me just go find my. Let me just go do this. I actually have posts on this topic, so let me just bring this across. There's more if you guys want to have a look. This is some history that the Muslims would love to forget, or rather would prefer that you don't know. This is called spilling the wine. Yeah, so don't spill the wine. So these books are available in the Topkapi Palace in Turkey. Just so by the way, this doesn't come from some crazy backwater. Bachabazi, exactly. So so this isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I had the Bachabazi. I had about 5 different episodes of Bachabazi on my previous YouTube channel before it got deleted. So, and then, you know what? Of all the programs or things I had on my channel, because I had something like about 500 videos on there, that one, although that section was the one that got the most watches, they were in their thousands. So very much a sought after topic.
Yeah. So this is lining up to use a BOY. From Sawakub al-Manaqib, copies in the Morgan Library, the Topkapi Palace Museum, etc. Okay, just a little bit of Islam there. So let's have a look.
So in effect, can I just ask a question? Were they boys kept for sexual purposes then?
Of course.
So that would be their own form of catamites, because in some of the English churches, they used to have boys called catamites, which were boys kept for sexual purposes. But Islam had its own version of catamites as well then.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Islam, the Islam they'd like you to not know about, like you to forget. That, that was going. There are other pictures I can show you. You will be shocked. Hold on, hang on. I'm just for the sake of, let me do this one. So, let me show one more. Okay, guys, close your eyes if you have kids in the room.
Oh my days. Oh my days.
Yeah, that looks like Arabic to me, but who knows? I'm from Africa. I don't know a lot. The Kama Sutra. This is a Turkish manuscript from 70. Oh yeah, Islam. What would we do without Islam?
That gives a whole new meaning to the term human caterpillar.
Okay, moving on, guys. Let's move on. Let's get back to. So guys, feel free to. I'll post those on my socials, and feel free to spread them. Okay, so the Philistines were a seafaring people who came from Crete, the largest of the Greek islands. The Philistines got their name from the Hebrew word plishtim, which means invaders. Palestine means invaded land. So when the Philistines invaded Israel in the 12th century BC, they lived close to the Mediterranean coast. They never settled in Jerusalem or any of the cities that are today claimed by the Palestinians, or Syria for that matter. By the 7th century BC, the Philistines had been assimilated by the Assyrians and then conquered by the Babylonians. From there, they disappeared from the pages of history, and experts tell us today no one alive could prove any kind of Philistine heritage. If the Philistinians want to claim this, they would have to acknowledge that their real ancestral homeland is not Israel, but the Greek island of Crete. And a couple more places, but why do you think they have openly declared that they are the Philistines, and yet the Philistines are now known, based on extensive research, DNA evidence we look into, that they come from Crete.
This is typical of Muslims today, following Muhammad's example of grafting on history into their own image. So they're looking for a justification for the land. So by saying that they're the modern day Philistines is their way of grafting themselves into the territory.
Right. So now also, let's look at some scientific research, some DNA research that's been done in recent years. Let's look at 1 Samuel 17:26. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine? Hold on. Are Muslims circumcised or uncircumcised?
They're circumcised.
Okay, so this guy's uncircumcised. Now, this uncircumcised group is described in several passages as coming from the land of Kaftor, which is known as modern-day Crete. before taking control of the coastal region of what is now southern Israel and some of the Gaza Strip. Now, I've quoted or copied some of this directly, okay? But this is very much further to the north, right? So this is very unlikely to be anything related to what, as I said earlier. So I've just copied some of this. So you'll find slightly contradictory statements in various of these sources. This is all Ottoman. This stuff was all Ottoman that I showed you earlier. That's all. I mean, it also goes to the Iranians. The Iranians have the same, so it's Ottomans, Iranians, same gay nonsense. So modern archaeologists agree that the Philistines were different from their neighbors. Their arrival on the eastern shores of the Med in the early 12th century BC is marked by pottery with close parallels to the ancient Greek world, the use of an Aegean instead of a Semitic script, and the consumption of pork. Now, some of them also come from, this is Spain, right? And on the bottom edge of Spain here, you've got the Iberian Peninsula. So some of them actually come from this region of Spain as well, because they found similar pottery and writing in some of these regions. So consumption of pork, that's a very Muslim thing, right? They love pork.
Yeah, washed down with a cold bottle of beer.
Yeah, washed down with a good bottle of beer, exactly. So many researchers also tie the presence of the Philistines to the exploits of what's known as the Sea Peoples. The Egyptians actually tell a lot about this. They've had some incredible wars with these people, and they helped to sort of lead to the demise of the Egyptian civilization. So this was a mysterious confederation of tribes that, according to the Egyptian and historical sources, appear to have wreaked havoc across the eastern Mediterranean. So the early bronze, so there were multiple early Iron Age DNA samples taken from infants buried beneath the floors of what they discovered were Philistine houses. So archaeologists discovered Philistine houses, and these include proportionally more additional European ancestry in their genetic signatures, roughly 14% than in the pre-Philistine Bronze Age samples, which are only 2 to 9%. So the most plausible models point to Greece, Crete, Sardinia, and the Iberian Peninsula as the source of the DNA. So in other words, there's a map, there's documents I've looked at, and they'll show the distribution of the genes, but it's all basically around Greece, so basically centered around Greece, right? So this is where the DNA comes from. So if the Palestinians want to claim that they are actually from this, that they are Philistines, then their homeland is around Greece, north, south, east, west of Greece. But that said, when you check their DNA, these people are Arabs through and through. They are Jordanians, they are Saudis, they're Egyptians. So they are absolutely Arabs top to bottom. Your thoughts on this before I go on?
Well, absolutely. The DNA and just proves the example there that they can't claim the genetic heritage because it points to Europe. It doesn't point to the Middle East. Yeah.
The point, so there's a couple of documents, like Ancient DNA may reveal origin of the biblical Philistines in National Geographic. You don't have to like National Geographic, they might write a lot of poop, but this one is actually based on legitimate research. You can go to science.org to this document as well. This is really interesting. I've looked through both. I've got 2 talks on my channel about this. Look up the Philistines on my channel on this topic. So the Quran's Jews, the children of Israel. The Quran makes lots of references to Israel, and the Jews are the people of Israel. So some notable references. They're called the chosen people. The Quran describes the children of Israel as chosen people, receiving blessings and guidance from Allah. In Surah Al-Baqarah 247, Allah chose the children of Israel. He raised them above all nations and bestowed his favors upon them. Right? So we can actually go to the tafsir, and you can see here that Ibn Abbas, he mentioned his blessings upon the children of Israel, saying, "O children of Israel." That's odd. These Muslims are calling it Israel. I thought Israel didn't exist. Am I reading this right? Is that word Israel?
You're reading it correct, sir.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought I was doing that correctly. The promised land. The Quran affirms that Allah promised the children of Israel the land of Israel as their inheritance. In Surah Al-Ma'idah 5:21, it mentions the divine promise of the Holy Land to the children of Israel, saying, "O my people, enter the Holy Land which Allah has assigned to you, and do not turn back in flight." Your thoughts, Thunderous?
The first of all, the word two points there. One is the word inheritance. When you look at the context of the word inheritance, it's something that you've been given or bestowed upon you from a previous generation, or in this case, from Allah. And then those do not turn, Allah has ordained for you, so it's yours by right because Allah himself has sanctified that land for you. And that was the other point there. Turn not in flight.
Yeah.
So Allah is basically giving them the command there to stand and fight your ground.
Doesn't that just... yeah, exactly that. That's exactly what I was thinking. So, yeah, then you've got the Exodus. The story of the Exodus of the children of Israel from Egypt is mentioned in various parts of the Quran. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:49-50 speaks of Moses leading the Israelites. Moses is a well-known Muslim, as everybody knows. So he was leading the Israelites out of Egypt and parting the sea to provide them safe passage. All right. So, yeah, so they were delivered from... So they were delivered from Pharaoh. So in that passage, you speak of being delivered from Pharaoh, specifically, and going to the assigned land, the land Allah gave the Jews. So, hey, doesn't it look like these Muslims are disagreeing with Allah? Doesn't it look like Allah is kind of disagreeing with the Muslims here?
There's a conflict between the two, that when you read the narrative, that the narrative isn't consistent with the attitude towards the Jews and the land of Israel.
Yep, so then prophets and messengers. The Quran acknowledges numerous prophets sent to guide the children of Israel, including Moses, Aaron, David, Solomon, and they're revered in Islamic scripture, and they're all over the Quran. Then there's the covenant. The Quran refers to a covenant made between Allah and the children of Israel. Surah Al-Baqarah mentions the covenant and emphasizes the obligation of the children of Israel to fulfill their duties, okay? And then there's disobedience and punishment. Now, so in Tafsir al-Jalalain, you have, O children of Israel, remember my favor wherewith I favored you. So according to Tafsir al-Jalalain, the Jews are the favored people of Allah. Not the Muslims in this case. Looks like it's the Jews, but okay, fine. Unless, of course, Allah abrogates his verses. But of course, Muslims are constantly telling us that Allah does not abrogate his verses. Allah does not change his mind. Allah, the Quran can be trusted. So, yeah. Sorry, Thunderous?
They're not even referred to by Allah as Muslims themselves, are they? The Jews or the nation of Israel? The nation of Israel that are Muslims, or the Jews that are Muslims?
Yeah, and not that I know of, yeah. And then Tafsir Ibn Kathir says, reminding the children of Israel that they were preferred above other nations. Ibn Kathir is saying they're children of Israel. Allah reminds the children of Israel of the favors he granted their fathers and grandfathers, how he showed preference to them, and we chose the children of Israel over the Alamin, the nations, with knowledge. Interesting. Allah chose the children of Israel over the other nations. Interesting. And Moses said to his people, O my people, remember the favor of Allah to you, that I preferred you over the Alamin. That means the kingship, the messages and books that were granted to them, instead of granting such to the other kingdoms that existed during their time. Interesting. So he gave it to the kingdom of the Jews rather than other kingdoms. And then in Quran 17:104, and we said after Pharaoh to the children of Israel, dwell in the land, and when there comes blah blah, dwell in the land. Your thoughts, Thunderous?
No, absolutely. All you see, in my estimation, I've always seen these kind of verses as Muhammad's appeal to the Jews in order to get them on side.
Yeah, and then let's look at Ibn Abbas, the last one here. Quran 17:104, and we said unto the children of Israel, after the destruction of the Pharaoh, dwell in the land of what? Just read that for me. Dwell in the land of
Jordan and Palestine.
So when are the Jordanians going to give Jordan back to the Israelis? Mm-hmm. Holy moly! Dwell in the land of Jordan and Palestine. Interesting stuff. Your thoughts on that?
Yet again, it's just another matter of Islam where it sort of like shoots itself in its own foot.
Yeah, so this basically, so hopefully you guys can understand that there's a conflict here between what Allah is saying and what Muslims are saying. And I personally, I kind of agree with Allah here on this one. Your thoughts on this, yeah?
No, this is it. Time and again, that when you go to the text, it's, we've seen it time and again before, where there is something mentioned in the Quran that goes against the current day narrative of what Muslims are trying to say, and they seem to. The only way I can put it is, Muhammad himself said that the first three generations of Islam are going to be the best of all Muslims. And now here we are 1400 years later after Muhammad's death. And we're finding today that the Muslims of today seem to know more about Islam, the Quran, the Hadith, and Allah and Muhammad than the first three generations that Muhammad himself said will be the best ever. So you're 1400 years away, diluted, yet you claim to know more about your prophet and even more than your own God than the sources actually educate you with.
Right. Yeah, so let's do a couple more pages. So guys, I'm going to go like another 5 or 10 minutes at most. Part of Jordan and Israel too, according to the Promised Land. Yeah, but according to Allah, according to Tafsir Ibn Abbas, Jordan and Palestine belong to the Jews. I'm not going to argue with Allah. Allah is perfect, right? I mean, right?
That's my point. That's my point. They are arguing with Allah. You're not arguing. You're going with what the scriptures say, but the Muslims are incapable of doing that because it goes against the modern day narrative.
Yeah. And Quran 10:93, Allah gives the Jews Israel. And we did verily a lot unto the children of Israel a fixed... what? Allah gave the children of Israel a fixed abode? We did a lot unto the children of Israel. Pick the... Okay, hold on. Children of Israel in Yusuf Ali. What? Yeah.
And then the context of something, when you use the word fixed, it gives the connotation of being something permanent, not temporary.
Let's look at Sahih International. And we had certainly settled the children of Israel in an agreeable settlement and provided them with good things. Okay, so apparently they have a fixed abode. Apparently they have a place to go. We can always look at the tafsirs on that. And we did send the children of Israel a fixed abode, a noble land, Jordan and Palestine. Oh my God, we're back to this again. And we provided them with good things, honey, quails, and spoils of war. Hold on, am I reading this correct?
Yeah, you are reading it correct, but you'll notice there's a couple of things in there. So the honey's true, the quails are true. I think there's only been a couple of times where the spoils of war were granted to the nation of Israel. Most of the time they weren't.
Yeah, well, anyway, so history aside, but Allah seems to be making an argument for the Jews here. He says that Israel belongs to the Jews. That's the word of Allah. Praise be to Allah. Good grief, you know, all ham to Allah. Right. Okay, let's continue. So, Tafsir Ibn Abbas, we did send the children of Israel a fixed abode, a noble land, Jordan and Palestine, and we did provide them with good things. So now, between 1949 and 1967, though, we need to note that every centimeter of the West Bank and Gaza was under Arab control. Of course, the Arabs immediately sprang into action and created or recreated the historic land of Fakistine. So, did they declare a Palestinian state? A Fakistinian state? No, of course they didn't. They did create the PLO to destroy Israel. They had the land. They actually had the land and decided, we're not going to create a Fakistinian state because there's no such state. We're going to create the PLO to destroy Israel because that is what this is all about. Jews are to be ethnically cleansed from the area, as Muhammad said. Jews and Christians will be removed from this land, and all that will remain are Muslims. Your basic 101 jihad. Your thoughts, Thunderous, before I go on.
Well, no, absolutely. This, yet again, going back to their claim to be descendants of the Philistines, is a hook by hook grafting on some history in order to maintain the presence of these Arabs in that area to justify any military action against the Jews.
Right. So we'll go a few more minutes, another 5 minutes, guys, then I'll call it a day on this particular one, and I'll continue in a few days. I'll arrange with Thunderous or do this myself. So Jerusalem, the Mufti, and Hitler. So there is no East Jerusalem, right? There is no East Jerusalem. There never was an East Jerusalem, right? It's called Jerusalem. It is the capital of the Jewish state of Israel. It always was. And even the Jews, even the Muslims acknowledged that. Even the Grand Mufti, the Nazi Grand Mufti acknowledged that, right? It is Judea and Samaria, not the West Bank. It was called Judea and Samaria back in the day. So this is what the Kingdom of Jordan renamed it. Instead of using the ancient historical name, they renamed it Judea and Samaria. Right, so they renamed it the West Bank. Naming Israel, Palestine, doesn't change Israel. Naming the West Bank doesn't change that historically. It has been Judea and Samaria. Jordan held it for 19 years until Israel took it back in 1967, which is recent. And there's no such thing as settlements. They are resettlements. Jews always lived in Israel. When Muslims take over a land, what they apply is the law they called in the Sharia called the waqf, right? They refer to it as an endowment. But basically, when Muslims put down a mosque is a political thing. When they put down a mosque, that is territory owned by Allah. Muslims have now conquered a piece of territory. It's like putting down an embassy. That piece of land belongs to the Muslim Ummah, belongs to Allah. It's now Muslim land, right? And if they lose that land, they have to get it back. They must reclaim any land that they've lost, because that land was given to them by Allah, and they must claim it back. This is part of the issue. Now, here you've got the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who moves to Germany and decides to become chummy through some SS contacts with this guy called this dude. Okay? And of course, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, he supported and he collaborated with the Nazi regime during World War II. He allies with Adolf Hitler's Germany, and he actively teaches anti-Semitic and anti-Western ideologies. Any thoughts, Thunderous, before I go on?
Well, we see the same things today in churches, not churches, mosques that have come out in recent news articles where this anti-Jew rhetoric has actually been caught on film in mosques up and down the country in England. So you can't say it's in a localized area when there are 5 or 10 mosques preaching exactly the same contempt towards being anti-Jew. You know, you have to ask the question, if all these mosques that don't know each other are saying the same thing, that's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. And where's the pattern coming from? And when you go through history, not just when we go from geography to history and looking through the pattern of time, we're seeing the same rhetoric again. So you have to ask the question: what is the source for this rhetoric?
Right. By the way, guys, I'm going to drop something in the chat. This is the link to my Twitter profile, my X profile. You can follow me there. I've been posting content there. And then also, just briefly, I want to bring this up. This is the Muslim jihad timeline. Islam has always been violent. Islam, for instance, you may not be aware, but in the 590s already, the 690s, the Muslims had invaded France. Now, let me know, what had France done to merit an invasion of Muslims in the 6th and 7th centuries, in the 7th and 8th centuries? So they had to kick them out. In 732, they were kicked out by Charles Martel. So ask yourself, did the French invade Saudi Arabia in the 500s? That in the 500s, the Muslims had invaded Spain and invaded France. So look at the jihad timeline, okay? You've got Muslim crusaders conquer Iraq, they conquer Medina, they control the Hijaz, they invade what's known as Palestine and Iraq, they conquer Syria, they conquer Egypt, they conquer North Africa, they invade Cyprus, they invade Tripoli, they invade Iran, Afghanistan, and Sindh by 644. So within 10 years of Muhammad's death, they've invaded like a dozen countries, right? Then they go into Constantinople, they go into Jerusalem, they go into the lower Indus Valley in India. Did the Indians at any time, did the Hindus at any time invade Saudi Arabia? Because this religion of peace is doing a lot of invading and killing here. Then they conquer Spain. Then they invade France, and this invasion of France is stopped. Remember, they were in France in the 690s. In the 690s, right? 40 years later, the French kicked them out, right? Then they invade Baghdad. They go into so the foundation of the Great Mosque of Cordoba. Then you've got let's continue. You've got Sardinia, Italy. They invaded Ireland. They invaded Denmark. They invaded... What are they doing in Ireland? Thunderous, what were the Muslims doing invading Ireland?
I should imagine they were taking slaves.
Yes, they were. Exactly. They invaded England, the UK. What did they do? They took slaves, right? Then you've got Sardinia. You've got Sicily in the 900s, right? And then you've got the creation of the Muslim Crusaders movement in Mauritania, right? Then you've got the Berbers, and then you've got the Seljuk Turks, okay? And then, only then, in 1095, Pope Urban II preaches the First Crusade. In 1095. Let's have a look at this list. This is probably not even a complete list. Notice, these are all unprovoked Muslim... Yeah, they had American slaves too. I've spoken about that on my channel previously. These are all unprovoked Islamic invasions of various places. And then, after 460 years, eventually the Christians go, I think that's enough. Let's kick your asses. Okay, after 460 years. They invaded Iceland as well, correct. Yeah. So, in 1941, al-Husseini meets with Hitler. He expresses his support for the Nazi cause, especially advocating for the extermination of Jews. He spent much of the war in Berlin, broadcasting Nazi propaganda aimed at Muslim populations, and he recruited Muslims for the SS, the Death's Head battalions, right? The Schutzstaffel. Al-Husseini begins the conversation by declaring that the Germans and the Arabs have the same enemies. And he says the English, the Jews, and the communists. So according to this Haj Amin al-Husseini, the enemies of the Germans and the Muslims are the Jews, the English, and the communists. So he proposes an Arab revolt, an intifada, across all of the Middle East to fight the Jews. And you can see here in Time magazine, they have this article, Hitler and the Grand Mufti, what they really said in 1941. Your thoughts, Thunderous? I think I'll end here for today, but what are your thoughts?
No, it's a pretty damning indictment of people's ignorance of history, particularly when you look at the charts that you brought up of Islamic invasions of previous lands. And when we're listening to history, we very rarely, particularly things like slave trade, many listeners of your show will be familiar with slave trades and such, but they never get mentioned in the media or in narratives or in documentaries as to how extensive not just the slave trade, but Islamic invasions have been in Europe, and at what dates, and how long it was endured before there was a response back to the Islamic invasions.
Correct. And actually, you've got here, Konatendi al-Islam said that if this was any other country, this would be called colonization. And then you'd be vilified and you'd be white racists if you did this kind of thing. Don't forget, within something like 10 years of Muhammad's death, or within 5 years of Muhammad's death, apparently the Muslims had invaded what we would today call, I think, 23 countries, right? Within 5 years of Muhammad's death, the Muslims had invaded 23 countries. So did Muhammad leave a legacy of peace, or did Muhammad leave a legacy of invasion, death, murder, rape, slavery, and killing? I personally think it's that one. Last word to you, Thunderous, before I call it a night on this one, yeah?
Yeah, he has left that legacy, but it's a legacy that's been lasting for 1,400 years as well.
Yeah, so Horse says our patriarchy is showing, because how dare we rely on facts, logic, and history and sources. So, yeah, guys, so this is, yeah. So, guys, hopefully this has been interesting and enlightening. This has been a major issue, and I'll be doing another show on this. So I've done 18 slides on this one. I've got 54 slides, I think. So I've done 1/3 of this. So I'll try and cover this again in the week, in the next couple of days. Maybe tomorrow I'll do another one. I'll let you know. Probably Tuesday night then. And Thunderous, when are you available next for us to finish this talk? Next Sunday?
Next Sunday, yes.
Okay, so I'll probably do a talk on Tuesday or Wednesday, guys. Probably Tuesday. I will do a talk on this one. And then we'll finish this with Thunderous, so I'll do 3 episodes on this probably. But this is detailed history. I will make this slideshow available to you guys, and hopefully you can use this. Now, please use this on social media. There are a lot of liars out there. There are a lot of people that have no idea what they're talking about. It's all propaganda. Fight them with the facts. Embarrass them. Humiliate them. Show them the truth. Right, guys? So thank you very much for your time. Thank you. I hope you learned something. Please use this information. Leave your thoughts in the chat. In the comments, leave your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you guys in a few days with part 2 of this. Thank you all very much. God bless. Goodbye.